Good evening, friends. Welcome to the 58th meeting of the study circle. Today we have us Mr. C. Manishankar, Senior Advocate, former Additional Advocate General of Tamil Nadu. He has completed his schooling in DAV School and started his practice in the year 1998 from the office of Habibullah Basha, a revered senior counsel. He expanded his practice on all the sides, more particularly on the criminal side. He is a patron of classical music and film music, and like his legal acumen, he has got a great acumen on music that I can vouch for. In the year 2017, he was designated as a senior advocate, and later he was appointed as additional advocate general, and he was holding the post well. And thereafter, he started his. He's one of the busiest senior counsels as on date. With this few introduction, I call upon Mr. Manishankar to give the lecture of the day. Thank you.
Good evening and thank you, Triple S, if I can say so. Thank you for a nice and brief introduction. And I'm also happy to see my friends. Despite relaxation in lockdown norms, you have still assembled to come for this webinar. I'm happy. And before I start, I would like to, the usual statutory warning that these webinars have been arranged for the sake of the junior members of the bar. So keeping that in mind, I have also going to address on the Electricity Act, the basic sections with specific reference to the adjudication process contemplated in the Electricity Act. Therefore, it's very basic. I will caution, I can see so many seniors who have been practicing in this branch, and my friend Senior Om Prakash is also here. So with this, I would like to give a brief background of this enactment, which was initially started in the year 1910 with the Indian Electricity Act. Subsequently, there were also other enactments of the year 1948. And the main purpose of this enactment of Electricity Act 2003 was to consolidate the Indian Electricity Act 1910, Indian Electricity Supply Act 1948, and Electricity Regulatory Commissions Act 1948. And all these three enactments stood repealed when the Electricity Act 2003 came into force on 10th of June 2003. And by virtue of Section 185 of the Electricity Act, all these three enactments stood repealed. This act was mainly introduced with the avowed purpose for revolutionizing and consolidation of the erstwhile acts, which I just now said. And the preamble of the act would also say it is to consolidate the laws relating to generation, transmission, distribution, trading, and use of electricity. Of course, promotion of competition to promote the level playing field, especially after the introduction of where the private parties can also participate in the distribution of electricity. That opened up the entire gamut of this legislation. With that, there came so many other disputes between the distribution companies and the other stakeholders, private operators, especially on the energy saving sectors. All these things got consolidated into one act, which was enacted in the 2003 Act. The most interesting aspect of the Electricity Act are that, to briefly state, decentralization of electricity production, non-requirement of permissions for electricity production. Of course, you will require a license under Section 14 and also to make an application and operate under Section 15. Then introduction of free open access system. This is where the private players come in. See, all along it was the major, the department, electricity department, which was holding a monopoly over distribution and also transmission of this power from one place to another. In our state, we have TANGEDCO for power generation and TANTRANSCO for transmission. So once the transmission lines are opened up to the private parties, the private parties will have to necessarily be given access to these transmission lines. So that open access system will have to be put in place, for which necessary agreements are also entered into. Then they also encourage captive generation so that you can use your own power, generate your own power, and use it for your own use. That you can also, if you find to be in excess, you can also sell it to the distribution companies. Of course, under various arrangements with the companies, the tariff is fixed by the regulators, which is the Electricity Regulation Commission. Then also to promote private participation, which I have already indicated. The policy appears to be one India, one grid. That is the object which this act seeks to achieve. And in the same thing, there are also various distribution, the dispute redressal mechanisms are also given, which is the topping from the starting from the top, the appellate tribunal for electricity. Below that, there is a central electricity dispute redressal commission dealing with the at the national level. Then the state electricity dispute redressal commission at the state level. Then there is at the consumers level, there is an electricity ombudsman, and also there is a separate procedure for offences and penalties. Now, if we go, now let us see the respective dispute resolution mechanism provided under the Act. Before that, it is basic to understand what is a distribution licensee and what is the interface of grid lines. And the distribution licensee is also defined under section 2, subsection 17 of the Act, which says that distribution licensee means a licensee authorized to operate and maintain distribution system for supplying electricity to consumers in his area of supply. So the distribution companies, which are called DISCOMs, are also engaged in generation of power. The grid lines are maintained meticulously on a specified frequency and load. Suppose if there is this maintenance is not proper, and if there is a disproportionate injection of this power, then it affects the grid, and there is a breakdown all through. Sometimes it affects the entire state also. So therefore, there is a particular department which seeks to maintain this power supply without any disruption. A power generating company will have to enter into an agreement with the DISCOM for the use of DISCOM's grid lines, because they maintain the grid lines. For if you are a producer of electricity, for supplying the electricity, you will have to necessarily use their lines. Therefore, you will have to enter into an agreement. And for this, there is a standard, if the agreement is also prescribed under the various judgments or orders passed by the regulatory commissions. And this will also have to be approved by the regulatory commission so that they don't go beyond the parameters or guidelines fixed by the regulatory commissions. In cases of consumers buying powers from third-party generators would also be consumers of DISCOMs, because they are using their power lines to the extent of using their power lines for such other power drawn from the DISCOMs. The power generators are also required to inject power in compliance of technical regulations, and any violations of the same may endanger the grid stability. That is one vital aspect which is working around the clock of 24 hours. Apart from the above, the DISCOMs are also required to purchase power from green power houses as per the national electricity policy. They are mainly solar power, wind power, and biogas generators. These generators have a right of preference in the matter of power sale to the DISCOMs as mandated under electricity policy. However, these green powers, take it solar or wind power, they are seasonal and depending on various natural conditions. Suppose if we take wind power in Tamil Nadu, the wind power is more between the periods of June and September, which it will be more. Therefore, what they do, they give preference to the wind power suppliers at that juncture. Solar may be efficient during a particular point of time, probably during summer or when the sunlight is able to generate power. So during those periods, they will have preference to the solar generators. It is the balance maintained by the distribution companies and by way of various legislations. They balance the power from the supply. And for all these things are made under written agreements, which also contains an arbitration clause. I will go to that a little later, but proceeding further, the main areas of disputes are on the clauses in the agreement, But once you accept the clauses, it is difficult for you to argue against it at a later point of time, which everyone knows. Then the payments is one of the important aspects where the disputes arise. And another important thing is fixation of tariff. See, after this open access system, when the business itself is opened, and that then there are so many suppliers, naturally the pricing comes down. Therefore, they start what is known as a reverse bidding process. Therefore, it will be fixed by the TNARC or the particular authority. They will fix it at 3 rupees. Therefore, as per the reverse bidding mechanism, you will have to give the persons who give the minimum, like 2.84, will get that award. So that is now a prevalent practice in the system. So in that there may be various disputes. Most of them will have to go to the TNARC, because these are all highly technical matters which can't be decided in a writ petition. However, the parameters of this writ petitions are qualified, like violation of principles of natural justice, or there is an arbitrary exercise of power in granting to one particular individual, or that the tender condition is tailor-made to suit a particular person. All these things are, of course, open to the person to come to a writ petition. Otherwise, it is always suggested that it is the TNARCs at the state level and CERCs at the national level who have technical members are found to be competent to deal with these kinds of disputes. Now, going to the dispute resolution mechanism, first we will see the role of the CERC. CERC is as per section 76 of the Act, CERC is formed and the functions are enumerated under section 79 of the Act. It is 79 clause 1A to clause K. However, for the purpose of today's, I will not be bringing all the functions of the CERC, but the important functions of CERC are to regulate the tariff, to regulate the interstate transmission, to issue licenses to function as transmission licensee, adjudicate upon disputes, then of course levy fees for the specific and specify the grid code and formulate appropriate regulations. The TNARC, the Central Regulatory Commission, functions with these objects in mind. And if there are any disputes, if it is interstate parties, it is only the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission which has jurisdiction to adjudicate these disputes. Similarly, we have it is the central CERC is the one which advises the central government on all or any of the matters to enumerate the few or formulation of a national electricity policy and tariff policy, then promotion of competition, efficiency and economy in activities of electricity industries, promotion of investment, and the Central Commission also ensures transparency while exercising powers and discharging its functions. In discharge of its functions, Central Commission shall be guided by the National Electricity Policy, National Electricity Plan, and Tariff Policy as per Section 3 of the Act. The same thing at the state level, the State Electricity Regulatory Commissions are formed, and Section 82 of the Act mandates the formation of the State Electricity Regulatory Commission for each state. There may be one joint commission for different states under Section 83 if such states so agree. The functions of the State Electricity Regulatory Commission are almost on par with CERC, but these are all confined only to the state level issues, like the determine the tariff of the generators who are prevalent in the state, then to regulate electricity purchase, procurement process of distribution licenses, including the price at which the electricity shall be procured, then facilitate intrastate transmission, then issue licenses to persons seeking to act as transmission licensees within the state, then to promote cogeneration, then generation of electricity from the renewable sources, then to adjudicate upon the disputes. Then for adjudication of disputes, there are certain things like what are the things which are which can be adjudicated by the commissions. That again based on the issues which the suppliers face. For example, it can be based on a tariff, it can be based on a breach of contract in the agreement, and it could also be on the price fixation, and also be on the fixation of tender conditions, etc. There are any number of disputes pending in the TNERC and CERC, and also in the, to some extent, in the High Court. And once the adjudication process starts, the Article 226 is not invoked unless you are able to show the parameters for invoking 226. Otherwise, being a specialized body to adjudicate disputes on the technical issues of supply and purchase of electricity, it is, the courts have always held that direct the parties to first exhaust the remedy at the commission level. Even if you are agreed by any order passed by the commission, there is an appeal under section 110 of the Act to go to APTEL. And APTEL is the apex body which has the right to review the orders passed by the commission, both the TNERC and the CERC, and arrive at a conclusion. And the APTEL is constituted under 110, and the provisions are section 111 of the Act, which constitutes APTEL to look into these disputes. Then another important aspect is the arbitration. Section 158 of the Act clearly stipulates that insofar as disputes of contractual nature between DISCOMs and power generating companies, the Act in section 158 provides for disputes redressal by arbitration and by appropriate commission. It has been consistently held that notwithstanding this arbitration clause, the parties prefer to approach either the commission or the high courts to voice their grievance. However, Supreme Court in the case of Gujarat Urja versus Vikas Nigam Limited, in the case reported in 2008, volume 4 SEC 755, have clearly stated that when there is a dispute mechanism provided under the Act, the other modes of dispute resolution cannot be permitted. In fact, they say after the enactment of the 2003 Act, that is after 10th June 2003, you cannot approach or you cannot appoint your own arbitrator by parties' mutual consent. You will have to necessarily follow the provisions as contemplated under the 2003 Act. And if you are agreed, it is the commission, and commission alone has the power to either appoint an arbitrator or say whether the dispute itself is arbitrable or not. That power is given only to the commission. And the Supreme Court says all other matters after 2003, 10th June 2003, there cannot be any private arbitration by consent of parties. So this is one important judgment on this jurisdiction. But the same Supreme Court, as we all know, in the case of Tangerco versus PPN, have also given an opening that APTEL can reconsider the regulator's discretion for reference to arbitration. The regulator, namely the TNERC, says that this is a matter for arbitration, cannot be resolved by TNERC at this juncture because this involves investigation of facts, deposition of evidence, looking into documents, and it may at sometimes may also involve cross-examination of the witnesses. Therefore, since we are already, our hands are full, it is not possible for us to deal with this. Therefore, as contemplated in section 158 of the Electricity Act, you can go and we will appoint an arbitrator to resolve your disputes with the arbitrator. However, the Supreme Court says that order passed by the commission itself is challengeable. It can be challenged, and APTEL is the body to whom the parties will have to approach. And APTEL, after hearing the parties, can pass either an order setting aside the commission's order of referring the matter for disputes for arbitration, or they can uphold and say that this is a matter for arbitration. Otherwise, APTEL can also, within its powers, invoke to see if the matter need not be referred to arbitration. You can examine the papers and give a conclusion, which generally is not done. Otherwise, they may remand the matter so that the parties will have one more round to voice their grievance. But in the Supreme Court, in the case of Tangetco versus PPN, 2014-11 ACC 53 gave this conclusion that APTEL can reconsider regulators' discretion for reference to arbitration. However, there is also a note of caution that as regards the matters purely technical, to be referred to the arbitration or to be resolved by the regulatory commission. Therefore, it therefore appears that the disputes regarding electricity can be arbitrated only upon reference by state regulators. The Supreme Court in the above quoted case have set aside an arbitration where the parties after the 2000 Act came into force appointed an arbitrator and the arbitration proceedings were in fact midway through. Our Supreme Court said that it is mandatory unless you are able to show any other provision of the Electricity Act which says otherwise, you are bound by section 158 of the Act and that it is binding. And Electricity Act being a special enactment and Arbitration Act being the general enactment, section 11 will have no application. As far as section 11 is concerned, it is only the regulator which has power to appoint an arbitrator and you are bound by that. Of course, with an opening to challenge that order in appeal before the Then at the consumer level, there are two stages. There is a consumer grievance redressal forum, like the connection is not given and that you apply for some 500 connections, only 240 connections are given. And they raise various other conditions which were not originally part of the order under which these connections were granted. Then there is a, you can approach which is headed by a superintending engineer and you can voice the grievance. And it is a quasi-judicial forum wherein you can appear and make your submissions. On perusal of the records, he passes an order. The order passed by the CGRF, it is shortly referred to. An appeal can be, a representation can be given to the ombudsman from the grievance redressal mechanism person. These ombudsmen are recognized under section 42 clause 5 of the Electricity Act. Section 42 clause 5 specifically says 6 months from the date of grant of license, it is required to establish a forum for redressal of grievances of the consumers in accordance with the guidelines issued by the State Commission. Section 42 clause 6 says if the grievance is not redressed, the representation to ombudsman is the available remedy open to him. And this ombudsman, again as an appellate authority, reviews the entire, it's like a first appeal, and that he reviews the entire documents, he gives a hearing, and the electricity board is also represented by the concerned AE or EE who has passed that initial order, and that it is the dispute resolution mechanism starts, and you are free to appoint a lawyer. And after hearing the arguments of both sides, he passes a detailed order. As there are no further course of appeal as far as this order passed by this ombudsman are concerned, the Article 226 appears to be the only remedy, so that the parties can, again, a word of caution, it is not automatic. You can, but there is no bar, as there is no effective or efficacious alternate remedy. Persons can approach the Honorable High Court by filing a writ petition under Article 226 of the Constitution of India, pointing out the fallacies in the order passed by the Ombudsman. It can be on the various parameters that it is an arbitrary, or that he has simply followed the order passed without application of mind, and he has in some matters invoked certain provisions which were not available at the time of the consumer entering into the contract. Therefore, on all these parameters, Article 226 petition will be maintainable before the High Court. As far as the other mechanisms are concerned, there are two more mechanisms in which the Electricity Act itself as a self-contained code provides for. One is the offences and prosecutions, which is stipulated in sections 135 to 141 of the Electricity Act. The section itself begins, section 135, as whoever dishonestly indulges in theft of power. There are two aspects of the matter. If you see section 126 of the Act, it says whoever unauthorizedly uses power, whereas section 135 speaks of dishonestly indulges in theft of power. Actually, these provisions are used over the other for an issue which is primarily within section 126 of the Act. The prosecution is launched against which the persons come by way under 482 to quash that prosecution. For that, you must show that you come within the parameters of section 126 of the Act, and therefore 135 prosecution will not be applicable. That 126 is a mechanism provided under the Act where there is an assessment. Suppose if at the time of assessment an assessor comes to our place, a residential house or whatever, a factory, and if he finds that if in the house it is being used as a factory or an industry, then it is an unauthorized use of power. You cannot attribute any motives or that there is no dishonest theft of power. Therefore, those kind of matters are taken up at the adjudication level, and that a proper assessment order is passed by the authority. Against that assessment order, you have a right of appeal to the appellate authority. Appellate authority has the powers of the first appellate court, and that they once again review the case, and it is for you to explain and convince that it is not an unauthorized use of power, and that the assessment arrived at is grossly excessive, and you can contest the assessment in the forum which is before the appellate authority. This is one aspect of adjudicatory mechanism as far as the assessment meter readings are concerned. As far as the prosecution is concerned, it is stipulated in sections 135 to 141 of the Electricity Act. As I already stated, 135 deals with theft of electricity. The section reads, section 135 of the Electricity Act clearly begins like this: whoever dishonestly, therefore dishonestly is an element of mens rea, and which, if it involves tampering of meter, act as res under the criminal law is also made out. Therefore, these two important aspects, if it is present, then they straight away launch a prosecution. The whoever dishonestly taps, makes or causes to be made any connection with overhead, underground or underwater lines or cables or service wires or service facilities of a licensee or supplier, as the case may be, or tampers a meter, installs or uses a tampered meter, current reversing transformer, or loop connection, etc. Whoever indulges in these aspects of the matter, if it is prima facie shown, the department themselves launches prosecution. All it requires is it must be by way of a written complaint, and all these offences are cognizable and non-bailable. Previously, before the 2007, it was the police were not permitted to, they did not exercise jurisdiction in the investigation. However, after the amendment which was brought in the year 2007, the police are also given power to investigate this complaint and file a case. And it is now, in view of so many cases springing up in various parts of the state, it has decided to constitute a special court presided over by a special judge. So all these electricity offences are not decided by the regular criminal courts, magistrates court, but there is a special court constituted before which, in all the districts, before which these complaints are preferred. And for that, it must be by way of a written complaint. And it is not necessary that the district, it is not necessary only by way of committal proceedings that the district judge acquires power to take cognizance. Even the person, the complainant can appear before him, present a complaint, only requirement that it must be in writing. Once it is in writing, if there is any prima facie case made out, it is for the it is for the special judge to take cognizance and issue summons to the accused. Thereafter, the regular trial commences as per the um, uh, procedure prescribed. CRPC is applicable as far as the cases filed under this enactment is concerned. So, Section 136 relates to theft of electric lines and material. Section 137 provides for punishment for receiving stolen property. Section 138 refers to interference with meters and works of licensee. Then 139, negligently breaking or damaging the works. Section 140, intentionally injuring the works. Then Section 141, extinguishing public lamps. Then Section 150 deals with abatement. If you see Section 150, the punishment section, it is rather stringent. If it is less than 10 kilowatt, it is based on the evasion. Fine amount is levied at least 3 times. Whereas for the second offense, it is 6 times, and there is a mandatory imprisonment for a period of up to 6 months. But however, if there is there is also a provision for compounding the offences under Section 152 of the Act, which specifically, and there is also Section 149 deals with offences by companies, which says that offences indulged in by companies are also liable. Companies can be prosecuted. Of course, with the usual rider that the person in charge of and responsible for the day-to-day commencement of the business, day-to-day proceedings of the business are also liable. And the proviso, like in the other enactments, say it is for the persons to prove that I am not the person in charge of and responsible for the day-to-day functioning of the company. If that is so, then he will be discharged or acquitted. As far as the cognizance of offences are concerned, it clearly stipulates, Section 151 stipulates that no court shall take cognizance of an offence punishable under this Act except upon a complaint in writing made by appropriate government or appropriate commission. Appropriate commission will depend whether it is appointed, appropriate government is the state government or the central government, or any other officer authorized by them, or a chief electrical inspector or an electrical inspector or licensee or the generating company, as the case may be, for this purpose, provided that the court may also take cognizance of an offence punishable under this Act upon a report of a police officer filed under Section 173 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. That is after the usual investigation procedure. This was enacted and came into effect from 15th of June 2007. Prior to 15th of June 2007, police had no role to play. It is only these inspectors or the persons who come for meter reading who turn as the complainants. But after this, the police are also given powers to investigate, who are better known to investigate these matters than the executive electrical inspectors or the officers of the electricity department. Therefore, the police officers conduct the investigation and file a report under Section 173 CRPC. Based on that, the special court takes cognizance and issues summons to the accused. And there is also the power is also given, specific power is given to the police under Section 151 capital A of the Act. For the purposes of investigation of an offence punishable under this Act, the police officer shall have all the powers as provided under Chapter 12 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, which will include also the power, the usual power exercised by the police officers in respect of search, seizure, recording statements, etc. The issue of summons to the persons concerned. And 151 capital B also says certain offences to be cognizable and non-bailable. Notwithstanding anything contained in the Code of Criminal Procedure, an offence punishable under Section 135 to 140 or Section 150 shall be cognizable and non-bailable. And there is also section 152, which has been incorporated to the Act regarding compounding of offences. The appropriate government or any officer authorized by it in this behalf may accept from any consumer or person who committed or who is reasonably suspected of having committed an offence of theft of electricity punishable under this Act a sum of money by way of compounding of the offences as specified. There is a table appended to the section 152 which provides for the nature of service and also the rate at which the sum of money for compounding to be collected as per the kilowatt or horsepower or low tension or KVAs as the case may be. So the nature of service could be industrial service, commercial service, agricultural service, or other services. If it is an industrial service, the compounding fee fixed is 20,000 rupees. Then if it is commercial, it is 10,000 rupees. Then agricultural services, it is 2,000 rupees. Then other services, it is 4,000 rupees. But there is one catch in this. Suppose it may sound attractive, but there is also a provision appended to section 152, which specifically says no person can be allowed to avail this compounding of this offense by filing a compounding application before the appropriate court more than once. So if you are done with it, it is for life. And if you commit or found to have committed any other offense under the Act, then this section 152 is not available to you, and that you are liable for all the subsequent offenses. So these are the broad categories as contemplated under the Electricity Act, which clearly demarcates from the consumer level to the suppliers level. As far as the consumers level are concerned, it stops with the writ petition and then to SLP, because it starts from the Consumer Grievance Redressal Forum to Ombudsman, then writ petition. Whereas the suppliers who come under the jurisdiction of the electricity regulators, and as the functions contemplate under the Electricity Regulatory Act, Electricity Act, namely section 86F, as far as the state regulatory commissions are concerned, they have to initially approach only the state regulatory commission with their grievances, which could be anywhere from fixing of tariff or the preference in the suppliers or the clauses in the contract or the award of tender, etc. But once that stage is crossed, they have to necessarily go only to APTEL, which is the appellate remedy provided, unless they are able to satisfy the parameters of 226. Then thereafter to the Honorable Supreme Court. And APTEL also provides a statutory appeal under section 125 of the Act, an appeal to the Supreme Court of India. As far as the grievance of the consumer is concerned, it stops with Article 226 and proceeds further up to under Article 136. Therefore, these are the broad adjudicatory mechanisms which are provided under the Electricity Act 2003. And I thank the organizer for giving me this opportunity, Mr. Om Prakash, my dear friend. And there is anything else I can, otherwise I thank the organizers. I think I have taken my time of 40 minutes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. So I would like to call upon any, if there are any questions with the participants, you could raise your you could choose the raise your hand option, or you could comment it on the chat box, and then we would let the speaker know about
it. I hope they are not shocked. They're keeping quiet.
So actually, I have a question.
Tell me.
So I recently read in an article that there's going to be a new dispute resolution cell that's been recently introduced by the Government of India for resolving disputes in the Electricity Act itself. So, and earlier today you had mentioned that parties usually choose to go for the commissions in courts despite having an arbitration clause in the agreement. Yes. So when I read the article, I read that the dispute resolution cell was itself being initiated so as to attract foreign direct investment, which would direct the cell to promote arbitration through arbitration.
named arbitrator. Yeah.
So would this, would the introduction of this cell help in the parties going to arbitration instead of choosing commissions and the courts themselves?
See, that will depend on the issue. Suppose if you see the Supreme Court judgment, Supreme Court says it is better to go for arbitration. But only thing where the regulatory commission's role come into play is only with respect to section 11. Otherwise, all the parameters for all other matters or all other issues, it is only the procedure fixed under the Arbitration Act will follow.
Okay.
So therefore, it is only section 11 which is not available to the consumers or the parties to the arbitration agreement. For all the other issues, it is only the Arbitration Act which will be binding. So including section 9 or subsequent appeals. Therefore, I don't find any discrepancy or any discomfort or any other issues cropping up. But we'll have to still wait and see that enactment once it is made, because they will have to take into consideration, since so many foreign players are going to take part. Now, even now, there are so many players with foreign participants bidding for various, especially in the wind and in the green sector. Yeah. So with that in mind, they will have to enact.
Thank you, sir. So if there are any more questions, we could ask the speaker about that.
I just want to have some two clarifications. One is that about this Consumer Disputes Redressal Forum.
Yes.
It is situated throughout the state, or it is only concentrated in one place? How is it, sir?
See, it is what they say, at least it must have in 100 square meter range, 100 square kilometer range. That is what they have in each place, this consumer grievance redressal, because it is only going to be decided by the superintending engineer, which every district will have a SC or an E.
So wherever
the only the
engineer, there will be also a forum.
Yes, there should be a forum. But it is a different question whether there is a proper person posted there. That we will have to see. Like for our own commission, you know, that case where the regulatory commission did not have a judicial member. So all of us were coming to the High Court. Then Supreme Court in the year 2018 held in that Gujarat case that it is not necessary that the chairman must be headed by a judicial person, but even at least have one member. That is the concession the Supreme Court gave to various state governments, stating that appoint one member, because you are, after all, adjudicating a dispute. You cannot have a non-judicial member adjudicating a dispute because all the advocates are appearing. You have to decide on the interpretation of a particular section. You will have to first of all decide whether this issue can be adjudicated by way of an arbitration, or yourself can decide it. If you take that call that you yourself can decide it, then you must be legally qualified. Bureaucrat cannot come and decide an issue which involves serious legal consequences. Therefore, after that, they say, we will not disturb the judgments passed so far, because our own Tamil Nadu Regulatory Commission did not have a judicial member. Therefore, pursuant to that judgment, once the member retired, they immediately appointed a retired district. They only appointed a retired district judge, who was a CBI court special judge, who is now heading the TNERC, along with one member, who is a retired IAS officer. Otherwise, the chairman, retired chairman of TANGEDCO, was the chairman of TNERC also. So it's two sides of the same coin.
Sir, likewise, how many ombudsmen are there throughout the state, sir?
So each thing, I think I will have to verify and check on that. But each ombudsman in respective headquarters, they have provided for. And he is also an officer of the department.
The filing of a complaint before ombudsman happens online, or we have got a place like a registry of filing? Or
see, ombudsman, they now sit in the TNERC complex itself in Egmore. In the same floor, ombudsman also, because he is only an authorized person or appointed either by designation or by authorization. Therefore, the persons holding a designated post can be an ombudsman. And recently, I had occasion to appear before an ombudsman in that case. It was, but one thing I thought it will be a virtual hearing. But it so happened it is a virtual come physical hearing because I had to go to TNERC building, then appear in a virtual hearing there. Because he was sitting in his room, I was sitting in the court hall. So that's how the proceedings went on. So therefore, each place has one ombudsman. But how effective it is still remains to be seen, because once you see the order of CGRF, it is almost invariably confirmed by the ombudsman with some concession to the consumer. Otherwise, ombudsman, strictly speaking, this is my view, my personal view, and they are not in a position to grasp the legal nuances. Suppose in one matter where they were wanting to give a gift or allot a place, since according to the department, it exceeded the particular number of connections, notwithstanding the fact that the initial application itself contained the number of connections which that builder wanted, which was approved after inspection, and subsequent to that, they give the connection. But the builder, in his own wisdom, thought it would be better to initially accept 250 connections, then later come for the balance 250 connections. When he, after completing the 250 connections, the work, when he again approached the department, he was slapped with an order saying that since it exceeds the required KVA of 5 kVA, you will have to give by way of a gift or make provision to fix a transformer in your place, which was not there because the building has come up. So many tenements have come up. Now, where is the place for that? So they were invoking the provisions of the Tamil Nadu Act, which contemplates that you will have to gift a particular place of land for them to set up a transformer or set up a substation. But when the entire building, there was no provision made earlier, suddenly if you say so, it is not possible. Therefore, a dispute was raised. It went before the CGRF. CGRF, of course, confirmed because it was issued by the EE or SE. Therefore, he thought fit not to interfere, that he confirmed that order. He said that you are liable to pay that, against which an appeal was filed to the ombudsman. Before the ombudsman, certain very valid legal points were taken because this particular provision, which contemplates gifting of the land, itself was not there in the statute book when the clearance was made. It came up only when you made the second demand. That was recently in the year 2019, whereas the initial permission was granted in the year 2017. But unfortunately, these persons who are heading or being the ombudsman, they may be in a better position to give a conciliation or a dispute redressal forum. But when it comes to this application of retrospectivity, whether this could be can be applied only prospectively, and whether the jurisdiction, whether the person had jurisdiction to invoke this section, are all I could personally feel are beyond the comprehension of these ombudsmen who are hearing these issues. I'm not saying that he is going to decide these issues on a day-to-day basis, but when it comes to that, it is always better to refer such kind of disputes to the courts, leave it to the courts. Otherwise, you should have a person specially designated, like what the Honorable Supreme Court said, have a person with a legal background. He can even be a retired district judge, not necessarily a high court judge for that post. If a person has that legal background, he will be in a better position to appreciate this line of argument. So this is again my personal view, which I experienced recently in that one particular matter, which you may also be aware of.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, okay. There is one question by Mr. Raja. I'll just unmute you. Sir, I've unmuted you. You can speak.
Sir, good evening, sir. Sir, this question is something related to what you just said now. Sir, there is a sewage treatment plant in some of the apartment complexes, which are...
Sorry to interrupt. May I know who's speaking?
Sir, this is P. Raja.
Yes, Mr. Raja, tell me.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Sir, there are sewage treatment plants in apartment complexes, which are being given a commercial tariff by the electricity board, whereas that is not, the act does not say so, because it's a sewage treatment plant in a housing unit. They straight away they classify under commercial tariff. But whereas it's a act which has to be done by the
Has to be provided by the builder.
not by the builder. It has to be provided by the government or the concerned municipality, but that has not been done in that area. So the housing unit has taken up by themselves. Instead of giving them a rebate, it is being done by being charged at the commercial rates. Will the dispute resolution mechanism like the ombudsman or the other mechanism will be able to handle this kind of it, or we have to approach the court?
See, this kind of, is it not sub judice, Mr. Raja?
I do not know. That's why I'm
Okay. I think I have come across. I think matter is pending in High Court in respect of one petition like this. But it is all right. See, this, I think it is an issue involving most of an administrative character. I think this can be resolved by the ombudsman, but provided if the, I said it is to be provided by the builder. What I meant was the place for setting up that ETPs.
That is there. That is within their complex. But only electricity connection is charged under a commercial tariff.
Yes. Strictly speaking, I think it should not be a commercial tariff. It should only be because it's a purely residential thing, and it is a mandatory. It is a statutory duty to have to set up such kind of ETPs in the area, which requires as per the Environment and the Pollution Control Board's requirement. Therefore, when you are performing a statutory function which is required under law, this cannot be treated as a commercial thing and charge you for a commercial tax. This again is my personal view, without based on your question.
Thank you.
If there are any more questions, I request all the participants to choose the raise your hand option in Zoom. Okay, seems like we are done for questions today. I would now like to invite Mr. Om Prakash, advocate, to give the vote of thanks for the evening.
Senior advocate.
Senior advocate.
Good evening, everyone. It is a privilege for me to give a formal vote of thanks to Senior Advocate Mr. Manishankar. Our senior today has taken us through the enactment in a very, very lucid manner. He had pointed out to the stakeholders involved as far as Electricity Act 2003, referring to the states, the center, and the private companies which are taking part in different aspects of the electricity distribution or generation. And senior has also taken us through the mechanism of grievance redressal, compartmentalizing as to disputes between the department and the companies who are suppliers, or departments and the companies who enter into agreement for the purpose of either generation or distribution. And he has also taken us through the other mechanism, the redressal mechanisms, as regarding individual consumers. And in the process, he has also explained to us in a very elaborate manner as to how different adjudicatory mechanisms are provided, like the Consumer Disputes Redressal Forum, from which it takes to the Ombudsman, and then without any further remedy, you invoke Article 226. Likewise, sir has also said cases which go before the State Commission, and once after the State Commission, you are appealed to the National Appellate Tribunal, APTEL. Then from there, senior has also pointed out that you have an appeal remedy to the Supreme Court. So in this manner, he has given us a clear tabulation of things for advocates to learn, mainly for the junior members at bar. Because this had been one enactment which I find many do not know how it operates. Many do not know what is the mechanisms you have as regarding the reliefs which you can seek for. So in that context, senior has given us a wonderful day today, explaining to us the entirety of the enactment. And thanks, Mr. Manishankar sir, for having spent your day in spite of heavy schedules, because I had been requesting you at least a month back for this session. I could also equally find that you are held up with very serious and lengthy matters before the High Court, being held up in the virtual courts throughout the day. And in spite of which, sir was able to spare his time, and he has given us the wonderful session. On behalf of all the participants of the study circle, I thank Mr. C. Manishankar, Senior Advocate, for this wonderful lecture. Thanks for all of you for having participated. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.